Hello everybody, it's Rick Miller with Southside Realtors, and thank you again for watching my Jodico Properties YouTube channel and your continued interest in this series on Saving Monica. Next up is Saving Monica episode number 8. This was a very difficult video to put together, but an important one. Now that I have finished identifying her market value, I need to determine a listing price and a marketing strategy to get Monica in front of as many buyers as I possibly can. Now, how we develop that strategy and the information we collect to make those decisions is what this video is all about. So we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Any marketing strategy always begins with developing a single simple message that attracts the most likely buyers, identifies the value of the product, and fulfills the intrinsic needs of the buyer. Sure, we could throw a sign in the yard and post a property in MLS and hope for the best, but is that going to be enough? Putting a sign in the yard and loading a property in the multiple listing service are just vehicles to use to convey the message. Although they are important, what is most important and will get you the buyer you are after is the message on that vehicle, whatever that vehicle might be it signage, email, postcards, or even knocking on doors. What will not only reach our target audience, but entice them to act. Every marketing strategy is a group effort between the realtor and the seller. Marketing any property begins the day you decide to sell. Like Monica, and even watching the prior videos, preparation for her sale started on day one. Traditionally, when I'm going to sell a property for someone, I consider 34 different ways to market that property. Not every one of those 34 tools is appropriate for every property. But before we consider those 34 different tools, there are 7 different exercises we must complete and make decisions surrounding before we determine what will be the best vehicle to use to get the information about Monica in front of her potential buyers. Now, I'm not talking about fresh paint and new carpet. You can find those recommendations in my video, Home Improvement Tips to Improve Your Home's Resale Value. What I am talking about starts with, and number 1, this goes back to the day you decided to sell your home, objectively identifying the property's best traits. And I am emphasizing being objective, identifying your property's best attributes and exploiting those attributes, identifying what it is that makes your home stand out and makes it unique. And we must exploit that in the delivery of the product to the buyer. So how do we do that? We do it by decluttering, depersonalize, deep clean, and stage those areas to make them stand out. You might be thinking, this does not sound like a marketing strategy to me, but it starts here, and I'll tell you why. The first place people go to find a new home is online, and they look at pictures. No matter how big or how small the house is, depth perception is difficult to measure when you're looking at photos. I can tell you clutter and personalized areas, especially those areas that are most unique to the home, because those areas typically get the most use and hold the most sentimental value to the seller, can be tedious and distracting to the buyer if personalized, full of clutter, and it appears unclean. We also need to give an immediate perception of value. Clean and decluttered, and the removal of personalization gives a perception of value. A room with knickknacks on every table does not. Before any description of the property is read, the first impression provided by the photos must lend itself to perceived value. A buyer is going to make a snap decision whether or not your property is right for them, number 1, and number 2, has good value, by looking at those photos before they ever step through the doorway. Besides, every buyer wants a home that looks roomier and has ample storage space, and 2, quite frankly, storage space sells. I've never heard of anyone say, I think there's too much storage space in this house. Regardless of who your target buyer audience is, this is always my first recommendation when discussing any marketing strategy with any seller. Number 2, and speaking of buyer audience, in the marketing of any property is delivering that product to your target audience. Who is your target audience? This is important. Are they a first-time home buyer? Are they looking to upgrade? How old are they? Are they single? Do they have a family? Do they have pets? There is no right or wrong answer here. Having an idea of who your potential buyer is helps you focus, formulate, and direct your resources to that buyer type. Number 3, next, this is also critically important, is to know the market area where your subject property is located. To do this, we need to look at these three variables. Number one, determine the average number of days on the market in your area. If houses are selling in less than 10 days, then you're in a strong seller's market. We need to know, number two, what is the asking price versus the final home sales price. In a seller's market, bidding wars can often erupt amongst buyers, which means sellers may realize final sales prices equal to or above their asking. In a typical seller's market, according to Realtor.com, an average 10% higher selling price over asking price is indicative of a seller's market. Number three, what are the home prices over time? Rising home prices are an obvious indicator of a seller's market. You can identify whether home prices are increasing or decreasing through a number of different websites, but look up your zip code and try to identify a pricing curve. One of those websites I like to use is builderonline.com. And again, you might be thinking, how does this all have anything to do with a marketing plan for Monica? But I promise you, it will all come together. Number four, since we have already done our market value analysis of Monica, I need to determine a sales price. As I mentioned in the last video, market price and sales price or list price is not always the same. And having a pricing strategy does have a bearing on what price to set based on what kind of market we're in, seller's or buyer's market. And just because you might think we are in a seller's or buyer's market in general might not be so for the subject property location. So keep that in mind too. For example, if the media is claiming that their real estate market in your city is booming, but during the same time of this claim of a booming market across town as a result of a plant closing, they may be in a buyer's market in that geographical location. And let me give you a visual on why this is so important. This is a standard pyramid, a standard pricing pyramid. And if you're interested in knowing how these percentages are arrived at, send me a note. I'll explain to you the best I possibly can, but it's beyond the scope of this video. Knowing your market is critical here. With the tools available online, buyers can educate themselves on what it is they are looking for, including market price of a home. And some more advice here. If you are going at this alone, be as objective as possible. It's tough, I know. You have a lot of personal investment in the home, but the buyer does not. As you can see, how you price a home does affect traffic, and traffic is what we want. Not just any traffic, but the right traffic that fits your buyer avatar. Now let's look at the three different pricing strategies. Number one, listing at market value. Regardless of what market you're in, and if you are looking to sell within a reasonable amount of time, listing at market value is always the best strategy. Listing at market value should leave you in a good position to get an offer within a reasonable amount of time. Now, number two, listing high. If you are not on a timetable, you could price the property above market value, usually 5 to 10%, in order to try and nab a great offer. However, this strategy does have its flaws. You might have trouble closing the sale if the lender does not appraise a property below the sale at that sales price. There are caveats to this, like someone offering cash or guaranteed money to close the gap between the appraisal and the sales price, but that is all chance. It is simply a risk that you'll have to decide whether or not you're willing to take. And also keep in mind, the longer a home sits on the market or goes on and off as a result of buyers' inability to close can also cause a stigma to attach to the property that could inhibit the overall sale or future offers. Number three, listing low. As you saw in the pricing pyramid, pricing low, generally 5 to 10%, will get you the greatest exposure and subsequent activity and could facilitate a bidding war. A bidding war is a good problem to have. More offers give you more options to choose from. However, this strategy can backfire on you too. If you receive only one offer at asking price or less, that is less likely to happen in a seller's market, but you cannot discount that this is a possibility. And there it gives you less wiggle room too to negotiate if you receive a lower offer. Now, we have thoroughly analyzed some of the key elements that will steer our marketing strategy. Next, let's talk about those absolute staples. As I mentioned before, photos, and I mean professional photos, not those taken from a cell phone, but photos taken by someone trained and familiar with the photographing real estate. The use of drones and 3D photography is also a plus. Everyone starts by looking at photos. Crappy photos can hurt a great looking property. Good photos can really dress up an average looking home. As a result of COVID and a lot of younger first-time home buyers, preference drone and 3D photography is really popular. Knowing your buyer is important here, and the vehicle for those photos is important as well. MLS and every other social media platform, we know loading into MLS feeds Zillow, Realtor.com, and other related sites. But don't forget YouTube. YouTube is the second most popular search engine next to Google. And who owns YouTube? But Google. And don't forget your SEO, or search engine optimization. Everything I have discussed here should help with that, and is becoming a critically important marketing vehicle, knowing your SEO. That's a lot of information. As much time and effort it took for me to put this video together, I also encourage you to watch it again, to put all of these pieces back together. Hopefully I've given you some guidance on how to prepare to market your property. I used each one of these different points to formulate my marketing strategy for Monica, and going through them shed some light on what tools I want to use and how I want to use them to get the word out, like an email campaign, Facebook or TikTok, and the best way to utilize SEO. Until then, this is Rick Miller. Thanks again for watching my Jedico Properties YouTube channel. And if you have some other good ideas about pricing, real estate, and pricing strategies, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave those ideas in the comments section. And remember, I'm here to help you become the best buyer and seller of real estate that you can be. So if you're looking to sell, good luck with your sale. And if you're looking to buy, happy house hunting.